What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, in the last episode, we had a major milestone with Project CB9. We took the ignition key and turned it, and the H22 just fired up and purred like a kitten. Now, as you can see behind me, Project CB9 is in a different parked position, facing another direction. We're ironing out some fine details, so let's go ahead and take a closer look. One of the most important bolts tightened back down is these axle nuts right here. These are torqued down to 181 foot-pounds of torque. And this is the torque wrench I'll be using. This goes up to 250 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, that'll go up to that rating. Now, you can kind of cheat a little bit, but you see this indentation on this nut. So if you've got an impact gun, and if you get this indentation close enough into this keyway right here, that'll basically be right in the area where you want to be, but you'll need an impact gun for that. So that's in case you don't have a torque wrench. So let's go ahead and get this torque down. I might actually have to put the wheels back on and put this on the ground because I just feel it, trying to turn this thing, it's just going to turn with the transmission. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, as you saw the previous video, we've got a high RPM on the idle when we start this engine up. Just one of the nuances of doing an engine swap, but we're going to do a process of elimination. It could be the idle air control valve right here, or it could be the throttle cable is too tight. So I'm going to start with backing off all the screws, pulling off the throttle cable, and then disconnecting the idle air control valve. After the throttle cable and the idle air control valve is disconnected, we'll go ahead and restart the motor and see if it's idling at an acceptable RPM. So let's go ahead and get these things taken care of. Okay, so this is what the idle's doing now. Adjusted the throttle cable. Now it's bouncing between 1100 and 1300 RPM. So I need to figure out if it's a vacuum leak or what else is going on. So we'll continue diagnosis here. What a difference from 24 hours ago. This thing is now idling much more lower. Bleeding the cooling system right now. Reset the throttle cable right there. Looks like I got a little bit of noise on the power steering pump. Might have to rebuild that. Right, take a look at this, guys. RPMs are hovering around 800, 900 RPM. Gas gauge looks correct, and temperature gauge is hovering just below half. You should be good to go. Now I do have a check engine light. I'll have to address that, figure out what code that's throwing. So far, so good. This is a drastic change from 24 hours ago, where it's hovering around 3,000 RPM. Not too shabby. Okay, this is the OEM downpipe for the CB9. I actually need to cut this off, and this attaches to the catalytic converter, so the exhaust shop will actually need to use this so it can make a connection on the aftermarket peel and exhaust headers. I'm gonna take my grinder, grind off these welds, and see if I can slide this thing out. So let's see what happens. Okay guys, underneath the car here, and got the downpipe of the exhaust header. As you can see, there's a gap between the exhaust header pipe and the catalytic converter. So I need to take this to a muffler shop, and then I got to weld up an adapter that goes from the catalytic converter into this exhaust pipe. Not only that, this aftermarket exhaust header hangs just a little bit lower than the catalytic converter. So it's gonna be, I think there's about 1.5 inch difference. So I don't know if they're gonna have to get further down the line, drop down the catalytic converter with some different hangers, but the exhaust shop should know what to do on this situation. So essentially this is just adventures of putting aftermarket parts in a car, since this is a motor swap and this is not direct fit. So we need to make do with what we've got. It is what it is. And got the O2 sensor hanging down right here. Make sure to go ahead and plug it in right there. So we'll go ahead and make the connection on that. All right, one more thing to note about this aftermarket exhaust header is you got these collars right here, and there's supposed to be a bolt that goes through. Anyways, after taking my mallet and beating it on there a little bit, these collars are not lining up like they are on the exhaust header itself on the motor. So I'm just gonna probably have the exhaust shop just kind of weld this in position while he's making the adapter, because there's no way that these collars are gonna line up for a screw to go through there. Okay, let me go ahead and show you what the exhaust shop did to make this connection on the exhaust header over the catalytic converter. Okay, now the first thing exhaust shop did, since this thing was hanging down about 1.5 inch lower than catalytic converter, he basically just took a mallet, knocked this thing backwards a little bit. This thing had a little bit of play, and so he basically welded the connection right here, which is better because these two barrels were not lining up for the bolts. And then he went ahead and welded a flex joint right here, which is very important. You need some type of flex right there with engine movement. And then we've got a 2.5 inch to 2 inch reducer going into the factory catalytic converter connector. Now, before I went to the exhaust shop, I was not able to find any flanged stainless steel M10 by 1.25, which is what these nuts are. So I've got some on order on the internet. So when they arrive, I'll go ahead and remove these things and put the stainless steel units in place. But overall, I think the exhaust shop guy did a very good job on this. It doesn't sound as quiet as a typical stock unit, but I believe these exhaust headers have a little bit more sound to them than a factory OEM header. But that's fine with me. So it basically sounds like a kind of mild exhaust system right now, which I'm fine with. It's nothing too annoying. It doesn't sound like a old hoopty anymore, so I'm pretty happy. I mean, it was a pretty embarrassing ride going up to the exhaust shop, open header, but I tried to feather as best I could, but it is what it is, and it's now taken care of. Okay, looking at the video coverage, it looks like I have 2 bulbs out. Third brake light right there, and the right brake light. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to replace those bulbs. And for the third brake light here on the top window, there's usually a plastic screw, but this is missing. It looks like they kind of taped this in position, but basically you need to slide this down and get access to the bulb right there. Now regarding the brake light bulb here on the corner of the body, for the CB9 folks, you can actually go into the storage compartment here, pull this down, and there's this little cover right here. So once you remove this cover, you can get access to the bulbs right there. So basically just go ahead and pull this cover off right here. You got access right there, so we'll go ahead and replace that bulb. Now for the CB7 folks, there's just a square cover that you pull off right there. There's no storage compartment like there is on the CB9 right here. All right, just came back from a test drive, and the biggest concern I have right now is the power steering pump. It is making a horrendous squealing sound, and I'm not getting much power steering on this car. When I'm trying to steer this thing left or right, it is very hard to steer. So by process of elimination, I've taken the belt off completely, and the power steering is obviously no longer there. It's tough to steer, but however, the noises are gone. So I narrowed it down to the actual pump itself. So we're gonna head to the junkyard and grab another power steering pump from a Prelude and see if that fixes this issue. So fingers crossed it does. So let's go ahead and grab that power steering pump over at the junkyard. Okay, I'm here in the private lot at my local pick and pull. This lot is basically prohibited from the pick and pullers. So basically you gotta talk to the sales department in order to come back here. So, and right here we've got a 2001 Prelude, and I'm interested in the power steering pump. So let's see what kind of miles this car has. 272,000 miles. Wow, that's impressive. Side swipe collision, that's what told this car out. And there we have it, we got a power steering pump. So I'm gonna go back to the sales office, and if they said that the power steering pump's there, I can pull it. So I need to grab my tools and get to work here. Okay, successfully got the power steering pump. I am taking a chance here with this car being at 272,000 miles, but being it's wrecked, it was running before it came in here. And here's the power steering pump in a bag to contain any loose fluids possibly, and all the hardware. Looks like someone has already grabbed the VTEC solenoid right there. There's still some decent parts left on this car, you know, the wheels and whatnot, and some body panels. All right, here is the Honda Prelude power steering pump we got from the junkyard. I had the belt on there, started the car up, and it was making squealing sounds and not much effort for power steering. Let me go ahead and show you what's going on. So long story short, we got ourselves a rebuilt power steering pump with new seals and new bearings. So hopefully this will resolve our issues. I guess third time's a charm. So we need to go ahead, transfer over the pulley onto this power steering pump. Now I believe the threads on this nut here are reversed. I'll let you know. So I'm gonna try to turn it to the right first and pop it off, because this pump basically rotates this way. And I guess they don't want this bolt, you know, coming off just in case, you know, with the rotation of the belt going that way. Now, after we take this pulley off, and transfer it over to the new pump, we also need to take this fitting, which has a 10mm bolt right there, and we will then transfer on the new pump, pull the screen plug out, and then take the 10mm and drive it right in and tighten it up. So let's go ahead and dissect the old power steering pump and make the transfer onto the new pump. And we've got success transferring over the pulley from the old power steering pump along with this fitting. Now this nut right here is not reverse threaded, so it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I also used some Loctite on here just for a precaution, and this is torqued down to 47 foot-pounds. Now if you've got a bench vise, that'll make a world of a difference. So basically I just took a ratchet extension and just stuck it in between one of the spokes right here, held it in place, and then was able to just torque it down. So 47 foot-pounds is the magic number. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take off the old power steering pump from the junkyard on the H22 and make the transfer, put the belt on, tighten up the belt, and I'll show you what the next step is after that. Okay, rebuilt power steering pump is now installed. These two bolts are 10mm. This bolt right here is a 12mm. And this bolt down here behind the belt is also a 12mm. Belt is now snug, about a quarter of a turn. And I also filled up some power steering fluid in the pump itself before I went ahead and put this fitting in place. And after replacing the third power steering pump here, I'm still getting some noise on the steering system. And I talked to my friend Matt in Germany, and thanks to his expertise, he pointed out the problem going on here. So you've got this high volume pressure hose right here. It's tapering off into this custom hydraulic fitting, and it's going back into the steering rack itself. Well, this blockage right here is causing the pump to work extra hard and causing that strain noise. So that's what's going on with the power steering pump. So in the interim, we're gonna go ahead and get another CB7 power steering hose. And then when I do the modification, it's gonna have to be right here on the head itself and not on the hydraulic rubber hose. So essentially the power steering system is not gonna be fixed today. I need to get some parts going on. So in the interim right now, I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up the tensioner and remove this belt and just tighten up the power steering pump to the bracket. I'm not gonna be running power steering right now until we get this thing resolved. I don't wanna ruin my new power steering pump, so that's what's going on. So thank you very much, Matt in Germany, for the expertise. So we're gonna go ahead and take that route, but it is what it is, and this is just part of the car building process. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a demonstration of what this power steering groaning is sounding like with this constriction in the power steering hose. So I'm gonna go inside the car, start it up, steer the wheel a few times left and right, and you'll be able to hear the fluctuations in sound. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay guys, that's all the time we got for today's episode. Now I've put about 100 miles on this car so far, doing random tests, you know, with the steering, the stopping, the suspension, electrical, throttle response and whatnot. And we've got an itemized list, and we're gonna knock that out as best we can. Now remember, go ahead and save those vintage cars and don't crush them. Now if you guys like the updates on the CB9, please give me a thumbs up. Go and hit that subscribe button for channel updates. Have a great day.